The Great Deception. Now, before I go into this, I want to say I have been looking and studying and researching this out for months. This perspective that I'm coming at you with is my perspective and my opinion, and my opinion only. Today, I address you on a matter of profound urgency, drawing from the courageous revelations of Dr. Michael Yeadon, a former executive at Pfizer, a man who once led research in allergy and respiratory therapies for one of the world's largest pharmaceutical giants. Dr. Yeadon has risked his reputation, his safety, and his peace to expose what he calls the ultimate betrayal. There was no pandemic. It was a crafted lie perpetrated to inject over 5.5 billion people with an intentionally dangerous substance. And now, as the veil lifts, we see the horrifying toll. Millions dead, lives shattered, and a future stolen from generations. Let me be clear from the outset. This is not a conspiracy theory whispered in dark corners. This is a call to awaken, backed by data, expert testimony, and the undeniable patterns emerging from the chaos. Dr. Yeadon, with his insider knowledge of pharmaceutical development, has stated unequivocally that the so-called COVID-19 pandemic was a fabrication. No novel virus swept the globe in a way that justified the lockdowns, the fear-mongering, or the forced injections. Instead, it was a psychological operation, a global psy-op designed to coerce compliance and deliver a payload that has wreaked havoc on human biology. Why? To control populations, to depopulate, to reshape society under the guise of public health. As Dr. Yeadon has said, the lie was maintained in order to inject 5.5 billion people with intentionally dangerous substance. And he's not saying there wasn't a virus. I agree there was a virus. I even had that virus. The grub is here. When they put you in the hospital for this virus, and they use ventilators, which weakens your lungs, they gave you stuff that was placebos. They weakened your body intentionally to scare you enough to convince you to take this shot. And inside the shot are deadly chemicals. So let's start with the foundation. The absence of a true pandemic. Excess mortality data from around the world, when scrutinized without the lens of mainstream media bias, reveals no unprecedented spike in deaths prior to the rollout of these injections. That means the flu itself was not, or the virus itself was not causing a rise in deaths. The injections did, so follow me. In 2020, before the vaccines, global death rates aligned with historical norms, adjusted for aging populations and seasonal illnesses. What changed? The reclassification of deaths. Flu, pneumonia, even accidents suddenly became COVID deaths to inflate the numbers. Hospitals were incentivized with financial bonuses for every COVID label. And the PCR tests? Dr. Yeadon and others have exposed them as unreliable, cycling thresholds set so high that they detected fragments of anything, not a live, transmissible virus. There was no pandemic. There was propaganda. People were dying, yes, but from complicated treatments, isolation, withheld care, and the weaponization of fear. Ventilators killed more than they saved, and protocols like the remdesivir accelerated organ failure. It was murder by medicine, a prelude to the real assault, the injections.
Dr. Michael Yeadon. Now, he says that maintained in order to inject 5.5 billion people with what he says was an intentionally dangerous substance, 17 million of whom have died so far, he says, after having received it. Watch.
There has not been a pandemic. Dennis Rancourt's data shows that the all-cause mortality evidence data did not increase at all in the run-up to the declaration, fraudulently, by WHO of a pandemic. There is no public health emergency except that created by our governments. And then what happened was, in 3 different ways, people were treated badly through changed medical procedures that were imposed above the level of nation, briefly, mass ventilation of people inappropriately in hospitals that led to lots of deaths. In care homes, many people were given sedatives and respiratory depressants, which led to their deaths. My PhD was specifically in that area of opiates and respiratory depression. And in the community, people were denied life-saving antibiotics and died of bacterial pneumonia. There's your pandemic. There is no other pandemic. And based on this lie, we were told that vaccines were coming our way and would be our savior. 2 things. As I say, first, there's no pandemic, so you certainly don't need an experimental, rushed medical intervention. But secondly, even if you did, as someone who's worked in the industry for over 30 years, I am telling you, it's absolutely impossible to invent, test, clinically evaluate, and manufacture and then launch on global scale a complex biomedical product. It's absolutely impossible. It's not as close, it's years wrong. The fastest record prior to this was 6 years. And friends of mine who've worked all their lives in manufacturing of complex biological products tell me the methods development alone for the development of a reproducible manufacturing process itself takes a number of years. So whatever it is you think was done, I am telling you, there was not the development of a proper medical product. What I think happened was the advancement of materials that are intentionally toxic, and then they were sketchily advanced and jammed into people's arms, often coerced, sometimes even mandated, with the unsurprising effect that millions of people have died.
Now let's turn to the vaccines themselves. These were not vaccines in the traditional sense. They were experimental mRNA gene therapies, rushed through without proper long-term trials. Dr. Yeadon, who knows the timelines of safe drug development, asserts, it's impossible to create a safe, effective vaccine for a novel virus in months, let alone one that doesn't stop transmission or infection. Yet billions were injected, and the data, horrifying. According to an analysis from sources like the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, the VAIDS, and global databases and the WHO, over 17 million deaths worldwide are directly attributable to these shots. That's not my number. It's echoed in reports from embalmers seeing unprecedented fibrous clots, pathologists finding spike protein damage in organs, and statisticians like those at Our World in data noting excess mortality surges post-vaccination. In the U.S. alone, the VAERS reports over 30,000 deaths, but underreporting factors suggest the true figure is 10 to 100 times higher. Europe's Eurovigilance logs tens of thousands more. These are not coincidences. These are casualties of a deliberate design.
We're good. 20 plus million people dead from those shots. Wow, truth's coming out about you and Fauci. How's it feel to kill more people than Hitler?
You're writing some folk songs about it?
You'll never get away with what you did. Your bioweapon. You're a
The side effects are a litany of horrors, each one chipping away at human vitality. So let's break them down, as Dr. Yeadon and independent researchers have documented. First, the destruction of the pineal gland. The tiny endocrine powerhouse in the brain regulates sleep, melatonin, and even spiritual awareness. Some call it the third eye. Post-vaccination autopsies and studies have revealed calcification and inflammation in the pineal region, linked to the spike protein's neurotoxic chemicals. Spike proteins, produced endlessly by the mRNA tech, cross the blood-brain barrier, causing stress and damage. Survivors report chronic insomnia, disrupted sleep rhythms, and foggy disconnection from reality, symptoms that align with pineal dysfunction. Why target this gland? Perhaps to dull intuition. It makes populations more compliant. The data from brain imaging studies post-vax shows up to 20% reduction in pineal activity in affected individuals.
So these people that have had this vaccine, I'm sorry to tell you, you've compromised your body. You have compromised your health. And one cardiologist said, by having the jab, you've compromised your heart 100%. So this is what the government has done to you. This is what the bureaucrats have done to you. You led like sheep to the slaughter. You were led like sheep to the slaughter over having this vaccination against your will. If you wanted to have the vaccine, that was your choice. But when people were forced and they lost their jobs because they had to have the vaccine, that's what I'm angry about. That's what needs to be exposed here. People's liberty and their rights were stripped from them.
Then there's the blood clots. A 700% increase from pre-pandemic levels. Embalmers worldwide, like those surveyed in global polls, report white, fibrous clots in veins and arteries never seen before 2021. These are not normal thrombi. They're rubbery, elongated structures formed by the spike protein binding to platelets. Data from the UK's yellow card system and the US insurance claims show these blood clots and their rates skyrocketing, 700% higher in vaccinated people compared to baselines. Heart attacks in young people, up 25% in some studies. Strokes, doubled. These clots are silent killers, blocking vital pathways and leading to sudden deaths mislabeled as natural causes. Dr. Yeadon calls it intentional. The lipid nanoparticles deliver the payload systematically, ensuring widespread vascular damage.
Death. Blood clots, we're seeing loads of people with unnatural blood clots, like white calamari inside them. The coroners won't talk about it. They just don't want to talk about it.
And what do you think they are?
I think it's a result of COVID vaccines. And it's been well documented by people far cleverer than me. And I've been shouting about it for years. But people just don't seem to want to acknowledge it. Mostly people like the coroners, most doctors, government ministers, they won't talk about it. They don't want to know. I've even been to the police station. They don't want to know. They won't even talk to me about it.
And what do these clots look like?
I've got some here if you want to see them.
Yes. Yeah, go for it. Wow. So, all of these sort of calamari-looking clots.
Infertility in younger generations is perhaps the most insidious. The spike protein mimics synctin-1, a protein that's crucial for the placenta to form. Antibodies against the spike attack the placenta, leading to miscarriages and sterility. Fertility clinics report a 20 to 30% drop in successful conceptions post-vax. Animal studies, suppressed but leaked, show ovarian accumulation of nanoparticles, causing damage to the eggs. In humans, birth rates have plummeted 15 to 20% in vaccinated nations like the US, Europe, and Australia since 2021. Men aren't spared. Sperm counts down 15 to 20%, motility reduced. This is eugenics by injection, a slow-motion depopulation tool. Dr. Yeadon warns the younger generations are being sterilized en masse.
Inoculated men does not swim. The eggs of inoculated women do not grow into embryos, and those that do have a huge amount of contamination. Inoculated men does not swim. The eggs of inoculated women do not grow into embryos, and those that do have a huge amount of contamination.
Autoimmune deficiency compounds the assault. The mRNA hijacks cells to produce foreign proteins, triggering the immune system to attack the body. VAIDS, the vaccine-acquired immune deficiency syndrome, is real, with studies showing depleted CD8 T cells and IgG4 class switches that suppress immunity. Cancer rates up 20 to 30% globally, as turbo cancers evade weakened defenses. Opportunistic infections rise, mimicking AIDS. Data from military databases like DMED shows autoimmune diseases spiking 200 to 300% post-vax. Rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, all surging. The body turns on itself, a betrayal engineered at the genetic level.
They told women in the study not to get pregnant. Nonetheless, 270 women got pregnant in the study, vaccinated women. Now, 234 of them, the records of what happened to that pregnancy were lost, which is illegal.
The reason the comparison to HIV is important is because HIV was also asymptomatic. I mean, you couldn't see the virus through symptoms because people were infected for 7, 8, 9 years before they developed symptoms. But HIV quietly destroyed our immune system, and we learned a lot about immunology from HIV, and it's changed completely our care.
The mass injecting of more than half the world's population with that drug is the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of our species, and it has happened now. And I know that's very, very difficult for a lot of people to accept, particularly people who've had it. But we are now living in the aftermath of that. And the repercussions are going to go on, I'm afraid, for a very long time. It's not like, lots of people died, and now they've finished dying, and obviously we want justice.
And now the truth emerges after millions of deaths. Whistleblowers like Dr. Yeadon, embalmers, and data analysis are piecing it together. Excess mortality in 2021 to 2023, 15 to 20 million above baseline. Correlate not with COVID, but with vaccine rollout. In highly vaccinated countries, all-cause deaths remain elevated. The perpetrators? Governments, big pharma, and globalists who profited billions while we suffered.
Everyone, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not in Cleveland, Ohio today, but this just came across my desk and I had to get it out as fast as possible.
So I get on the computer and have access to it and I start plugging in ICD codes. And the numbers are just unreal. So I call Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers.
My name is Pete Constantine Chambers, retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army Special Operations. I was also a flight surgeon with the United States Army Green Berets. When I lost the ability to go to my command, I went to a congressman. I went to 2 congressmen. I went to 3. Nobody wanted to talk about it until finally Senator Johnson came forward and said, I'm looking for whistleblowers. And I had been talking to Dr. Teresa Long, a lieutenant colonel, flight surgeon out of Fort Rucker, Alabama, and she said, look at the DMED data, Defense Medical Epidemiology Database. Look at that data. Pulled up the DMED data and went, whoa, neurologic events up 1,100% since the shots rolled out. 11x rise.
Not found a rate of transverse myelitis, for instance, that is higher than would be expected in the population.
So this is transverse myelitis. So essentially 2021 had as many cases as the preceding 4 or 5 years before it.
That's the main part of defining a safety signal. Is it out of the ordinary?
I don't have the data to be able to make a connection yet.
The average number of adverse event reports to VAIDS over the past 30 years for all vaccines combined is 39,000, more or less.
Compare that to over 700,000 reports.
You don't have to consider it to see a deplorable safety profile.
There's a database that exists in the government realm called the Social Security Administration Death Master File, and this file has roughly 90 million records in it, and it captures 85 to 90% of deaths in the United States. So what I did was compare each month for the prior 5 years.
For these mRNA vaccines, there is incredible BS out there about like thousands of people dying, etc. That just ain't true.
We are seeing right now the highest death rates we have ever seen in the history of this business. It's not just at One America. The data is consistent across every player in that business.
When comparing the DMED data to VAERS and to other data banks around the world, to include actuaries from insurance companies, when you compare those, they virtually line up the same.
I don't want to think that these things are so dangerous that they're causing this much excess and injuries in my fellow people.
How could we be lied to? Through control of media, censorship of dissent, and behavioral psychology. Fear is a weapon. They divided us, vaxxed versus unvaxxed, masked versus free. But the dying, from botched protocols, propaganda-induced isolation, and the shots themselves. It was never about a virus. It was about infecting and killing millions under the banner of safety. So what do? First, we demand accountability. Investigations, tribunals, hold Fauci, Gates, Tedros, and pharma CEOs responsible. Second, reject future mandates. No more experimental jobs. No digital IDs tied to compliance. And third, heal. Support detox protocols, natural immunity boosters, and communities for the injured. Finally, remember, this was about power. They aimed to break us, but truth endures. Dr. Yeadon risked everything to warn us, so let his words echo. There was no pandemic. It was a lie to inject billions. We owe it to the dead, the injured, and our children to fight back. The great deception ends here. Rise up, question everything, and reclaim your sovereignty. Thank you, and God bless you all.